Welcome back, folks, to the WP-Tonic Friday Roundtable Show, episode 302. We've got a small panel here, but a powerful panel. Some of the other panel have gone off to Europe, but we'll be talking about that pretty soon. I'm going to let Sally introduce herself. Would you like to introduce yourself quickly, Sally?
Certainly. My name is Sally Getch. You're probably familiar with me if you listen to or watch this show at all frequently. My business is WP Fangirl, and I build customized sites for clients aimed at making them achieve their business goals and enjoy using the website. And I'm also the organizer of the East Bay WordPress meetup in Oakland, California.
It's a great one. And my friend John Locke, would you like to quickly introduce yourself, John?
Sure thing. My name's John Locke. I do SEO for manufacturing firms.
That's right. Does a very good job of it. And I'm the founder of WP-Tonic. We're a maintenance support company specialising in WordPress with an emphasis on membership and learning management system powered WordPress websites. We can build them from the ground up, or we can support them so you can concentrate on your membership business. So I think we've got some good stories here. I managed to find some. I think we start with the WordCamp Europe 2018, which is started yesterday. And it's in Belgrade. That's in Serbia. I would have fancied going myself, but I'm going back to the UK in September, so I could face two trips. So, Sally, any of the speakers or topics you thought were going to be?
I think it all looks, interesting. I noticed that it's heavy on the Gutenberg, and I'm kind of sorry that I'm, not there to be at the workshops and the roundtables and the walk through it, because it's very hard for me to find time to just sit down and learn stuff if it's not like I have to build this for a client. And being at a conference is an opportunity to do that and concentrate on that. There's a handful of security talks, accessibility talks, a couple of talks on mental and physical health, which is probably important. The one that's super caught my eye, though, is Intro to Drupal for WordPress folks.
All right.
and I noticed it in part because, I had added to our discussion list a few weeks ago a talk about WordPress that was given at a Drupal event. And I think it is useful to know. I mean, it's that if nothing else, it's good for WordPress people to know where the strengths of Drupal are, in case somebody does come to you with a project where you think, well, I could contort WordPress into doing this, but you might be better off finding a Drupal expert to build you a Drupal site.
That's interesting. Yeah, thanks for that. What about you, John? Any of the speakers and talks took your eye at all?
Yeah, I'm glad Sally pointed out that Intro to Drupal one, because I didn't even notice that. I think that's pretty interesting. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of Gutenberg. I noticed there's a couple talks by the Yoast team.
Yeah.
One on technical SEO, and then I think there's one on content.
Yeah, just as a side note, what did you think? I didn't have it as a story last week, but they had, Adam from WP Crafter that sometimes joins us for these round tables. He did a special video. They had this bug in their Yoast SEO product linked to the
media stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. What did you think of all that, John? Do you think it was overblown a bit, or do you think that Yoast didn't actually deal with it that well?
Right. And we have friends that had that as well with the attachments. So for those who are listening at home, Yoast has a setting where attachment pages, say if you upload an image to a page, it creates a page called an attachment page where it just has the image there. There's a setting in there where you can basically 301 redirect the attachment pages to the parent page. But one of the things that was this bug in Yoast, which was from March up until the end of May, was they were getting all the attachment pages were getting indexed in Google. So I think that Yoast treated it with the right level of concern. If you have an older version of Yoast, update it. Make sure that you go to the media tab and just, forward those attachment pages to the parent page. So,
well, there's a setting which should, which normally, is it yes or no? It's yes.
I think it's turned on by default, or it's supposed to be turned on by default, and that got turned off somehow in the update. I don't know. It just seems kind of like business as usual for Yoast. They don't test stuff enough before they release it, and then you have like ting 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 updates, 4 days in a row.
Yeah, I think you summed it up really very clearly. Really, I'm quite impressed with that. That does seem to that is the general criticism you could make of them. They don't seem to do enough testing. But on the other hand, it might be it's just that they do the testing, but it's an extremely popular plugin on almost, I don't know what percentage.
It's hard to test things in every circumstance. I mean, I think it's probably impossible to test things in every circumstance, but it is it's a case where if there's a problem, it's going to be a problem for a lot of people. Now, I have to say, one of the things that impresses me most about the WordCamp schedule is just how nicely it scales. If you look at it on a small screen, the way the table layout just adjusts itself. I'm dealing with a site where like everything has been built with tables for like I have no idea what reason, and I'm working on transitioning out of that. So tables are kind of on my mind.
Right.
And this is, I looked at the HTML. It is technically a table.
Yeah, I went on a side note, just to wrap up, it seems a great conference. They seem to have some great speakers. And I understand it's going to be bigger than WordPress USA, actually.
I think it's been bigger than WordCamp US. And WordCamp US is pretty big, but there are a lot of people in Europe, and a number of people able to travel from elsewhere to Europe.
Yeah,
I would have asked me, but...
I would have liked to have gone, but no. There we go. On to the next story. Clients' work slowing down. And this is from Scott Bollinger, a great WordPress developer, really clever guy. I've interviewed him on the WP-Tonic show. I have a link to that interview in the show notes, folks. Just a great guy, and really. What did you think of this one, Sally?
I was astounded to hear it because I have been swamped. So it's like, well, I haven't personally noticed this, and it's not like I'm, I am not a person who's managed to like really define a niche well and specialize and do all those things that you're, supposed to do to grow business. But my business is doing very well. I've got, work coming in, and he's got a note at the bottom saying, a lot of people did comment that this wasn't happening to them. So yeah, that was my first thought, is like, well, it's, I'm not seeing it myself. I haven't heard people complain about it in the meetup. And I'm not sure about after the big shift to mobile, big changes stopped coming. It's people don't need to rebuild their whole website, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, they may not need to change platforms, but businesses change. I've built like 3 websites for the same people over the years. It was like, well, yeah, there was the one we did in, 2007, or there was the one we did in 2014. There was the one we did in 2015. There was the one we did in 2016 because, the identity of her business changed. And the, look of things had started to get kind of stale. And, the stuff that you built the site with a few years ago is maybe not as, effective as the stuff you would build the site with now. So while some people are, they don't feel like their website needs much updating, and they haven't looked at it, and it's not really a big part of their business. People who understand that their website is an important part of their business and of their, mission, of their income, get stuff redone. That it may be a redesign. It may be, oh, I want to add this function onto it. But I have had a lot of people coming back. And of course, then there are the people who are in situations. I mean, the conference I was at was for a client who paid an agency that they'd worked with for a long time on their Code Igniter site. They paid them $30,000 to build a new WordPress site, and they were not happy. I mean, they liked the look of it, but they weren't happy with the people, and they were frustrated with some of how things had been done. And so I inherited their website, and now I'm sort of piece by piece cleaning stuff up that was just like, WTF, how many people did you outsource this to simultaneously when it was developed? Because your code is really inconsistent. There's absolutely work there. And there's going to continue to be work. And if you have a good relationship with your clients, there will be repeat work because it's pretty rare that you can go more than a few years without having to make some fairly major updates, either because you have changed and the content needs changing, or because design has changed, or because something has gotten to be old and not as effective.
You made some great points there. Thanks, Sally. What do you think, Sean?
I have some thoughts on this.
Can I just say something before you start?
Please.
I just think it's a very, very diverse situation. And I also think it's really dependent on what area you're working in, the kind of clients you've attracted in the past. I think there's a lot of factors involved in all this. What do you reckon, John?
Yeah, definitely. So there was also a thread on Twitter where Scott tweeted this out, and there was some discussion around that. And there is different people, agency leaders, and just different people in the WordPress space chiming in on that. So definitely go seek that out as well. This article is really, you have to keep in mind, written from the perspective of someone who's knee-deep in the WordPress 1% community, meaning all the people who listen to podcasts like this or go to WordCamps. And the majority of agencies out there that use WordPress to build sites are not part of the 1% WordPress community. That said, there was a slowdown in the agency world in 2013 and 2014. A lot of high-profile companies either downsized or they were struggling with finding clients because they were more generalist shops. And I think you're seeing something similar like that in WordPress for certain agencies, especially where it's undifferentiated. And, Sally's doing good. And I know a lot of people outside the WordPress, hardcore community that are doing fine. They've, people who have never been to a WordCamp, regular agencies, not worried. But I think a lot of it comes down to, how much business development do you do? What does that look like? Are you just looking to the bigger agencies that in the WordPress space to kind of kick you down the work that they don't want? Or are you looking for your friends to hook you up with projects? Or are you doing active business development outside of the WordPress bubble? I
have to say most of my sort of newest projects have come from people I know from outside the WordPress world, because I spend a lot of time making myself ubiquitous. And doing a lot of networking. And also, there was other stuff I was doing before I did WordPress, and then alongside it until it completely ate my life. And so, yeah, there are people I know because we've been, part of the same podcast since 2005. And, people I know because they were in a business network with me that I started going to in 2003. And
can I ask you a real question? You probably don't know the answer. Do you think actually coming regularly, you've been, you've really supported the podcast, Sally. You've come on very regularly on this Friday. That's morphed into this Friday round table. Do you think it's actively helped you get business in some way?
I have no idea.
No.
Nobody has mentioned it. And I think, probably most of the people who listen to the show are WordPress people. Now, and I know where a number of my referrals have come from recently, and they've been from, personal contacts that I've had for a while. But, my feeling is that if it does anything business-wise for me, what it probably does is make more people in WordPress aware of me, and then one of them might say, if a prospect is not appropriate for them, oh, well, maybe that would be good for Sally. John's contacted me a couple of times about things like that. But, I come on this podcast because it's fun.
Yeah.
And, because I get to
it's really funny to take the mickey out of me, isn't it?
That's right.
It's so easy, isn't it?
And we get to hear Morten being brilliant fairly often, and to have intense discussions. And since I am a person who works at home, it helps with the kind of hermit-like nature of my existence.
Yeah, right.
Feel that.
On to the next story. Plugin Detective wins WordCamp Orange County 2018 Plugin-a-Palooza.
Plugin-a-Palooza.
Palooza. All right, there we go. Want to start off with that one, John?
Sure. I didn't go to the OC WordCamp, but they had basically a contest where it's like, show us your plugin, and then we're going to choose a winner. So this is basically a troubleshooting plugin, because a lot of what makes WordPress so popular is the fact that you can find a plugin to add functionality for almost anything, but sometimes it causes code conflicts, and you might get errors, or something might look off, or you have white screen of death, or it looks like this is a plugin to help assist in troubleshooting what plugin might be causing conflicts. So that could be very useful.
Yes, it seems like it would be extremely useful, and it's been developed with an amusing and clever interface on top of it.
Well,
yeah,
actually,
characters are good.
Yeah, it's. I knew about this plugin before he actually won. I forgot the name of the guy, the chief developer, but he was on Chris's podcast where he did a webinar. He did, because he's in the middle of developed and also business development of actual free plugins that he's developed.
Yes, it's Nathan Tyler and Natalie McLeese.
Yes, and he was on Chris's podcast, and all three of the plugins which they're actively developing and looked really quite good. But I think there's definitely been a need for these type of tools. There's definitely something missing about actually helping power users or even developers with better tools around this area. Would you say that, Sally?
Let me unmute first. I would absolutely say that. And, I'm sure that as a maintenance company, you end up with a lot of people's websites where they've installed like 5 plugins that do the same thing. And then you have, JavaScript conflicts all over the place because every one of them is loading their own copy of whatever it is. So, that kind of troubleshooting, I mean, it is a slow process to go through the, turn everything off. So revert to the default theme. Does the problem go away? Turn off all your plugins and reactivate them one by one and see when it comes back. And then there's the really annoying thing is you deactivate everything and reactivate it, and then the problem doesn't come back, because it's just as frustrating that you not knowing why something works as not knowing why something doesn't.
Yeah, what do you reckon, John?
Yep, I think it'll be a useful plugin. That's I got nothing further.
What is that, John? You're just not interested?
No, I I don't have anything to do.
The Plugin-a-Palooza is kind of an interesting notion of I don't know that I've ever come across a sort of let's have a Shark Tank moment thing on at a WordCamp.
Actually, I was at Orange County last year. Or was it the year before? God, they all merged, don't they? Actually, it's a really great WordCamp, actually, and had a really great buzz to it. I really enjoyed it, actually, but I just couldn't make it this year. But yeah, all right. I think we're going to go for our break, folks. But before we go for our breaks, I want to talk about one of my great sponsors, and that's Kinster Hosting. Kinster Hosting, big enough to have all the bells and whistles, small enough to still care. I think they're a competitor to WP Engine. I actually personally think they're better. I think their level of service is better, and I think the technology that they offer, you have all the latest choices in PHP, and their support, staging site, backups, all fantastic. They deserve the growth which they're getting, and I can't recommend them more highly, really. They've been great to work with as a sponsor, and also with my own site and some of my client sites. So if that sounds really interesting, go to the WP-Tonic. There's links and banners, they're affiliate links. Use one of those, and you'll be supporting the show, and you'll be supporting Kinster. We're going to go for our break, folks, and then we come back. We've got some more, I think, interesting stories. We'll see you soon, folks. Coming back, I'm doing well. I'll probably die after the show. I've had a stinking virus for the past 4 or 5 days. On to the next story. SEO hacks to boost your website ranking. What did you think of this one, John?
Yeah, these were some interesting, hacks, and I'll describe why. The 3 that they say are use video and transcription, link to the right sources, and tag like a pro. And I'll break those down like really quick. The first one, they say using videos will basically give the search crawlers like more information, but you want to have transcriptions. I think that you want to do that anyway, and even with podcasting, I would say it's more useful in podcasting to have transcriptions, but with videos, it definitely adds information. YouTube is actually pretty good at deciphering the words that are in a video. I think you should close caption each of your videos. But I will agree with use a video for a different reason than what they state here. And that is, by having a video on a page, people are going to be more likely to play that video, and they're going to stay on the page longer. Google is going to see that and say that this page probably is useful because it's supplying information, because people are watching that video and getting that information on there because they're staying on there longer. Plus, you're giving people another way to consume information. Instead of just reading, they can also watch a video. If you have audio, that might be helpful too. So the second tip that they have is link to credible sources. And they say, a link to the New York Times as a news source is more credible than just some random blog out there. And while I agree with that, this can make a little difference, but I wouldn't say that this is like a huge factor. I'd say that it is probably something that they look at. Do you source your information from credible sources? I wouldn't say that it's like a major factor, but it's something that you should consider. You should source credible sources. The third hack, they say, is using meta tags. Now they talk about the title tag and then the meta description and then the meta robots. I'm not going to talk about the meta robots too much, but they said the meta description is arguably the most important tag for actual users, and that's what shows up in, say if you're doing a Google search, the title tag is the headline, and then the description is the couple lines of text after that. Now, your meta description does not directly affect your search rankings, but what it affects is click-through rate. Now, Google looks at, each thing that's slotted in a ranking, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and they have an average click-through rate for each of those positions. Your goal is to beat the click-through rate for whatever position your the search engine result is at. So the description can assist in that, but like the words that you put in the description do not directly affect your search ranking. However, the title tag is what I would say is the most important tag of what they're mentioning here. That has a big impact on your search ranking. You do want to have your keyword or something that is very similar to your keyword in your title tag if you're trying to rank for a certain keyword phrase. If you don't have that keyword phrase in there or something that is synonymous with it, you're probably not going to rank. So
I think it was all great stuff. Before I throw it over to Sally, I was talking to Jack of WP Fusion on Wednesday. We did a great interview of his great product, WP Fusion. What does WP Fusion do, folks? It helps you connect. Like if you got a drip campaign, you're using drip or you're using active campaign, and you're looking for a program that can really work with one of these programs and help you build separate campaigns. This plugin, WP Fusion, helps you dramatically with that, and it works with all the leading automation programs like Infusionsoft, Active Campaign. And I'm giving him a bit of a plug here because he's just a great developer. We had a great discussion, and you'll be able to hear it next week, folks. But the reason why I'm actually mentioning it is that he said he just hired a firm, and I know who owns the firm, and he's coming. We've had a bit of a business relationship over the years, and he just hired, and he said that they've managed to, in about a 2-month period, they've managed to get double the amount of traffic to the WP Fusion website, and he's seen a dramatic uptake in people purchasing his plugin. And the main tool they've been using to do that, John, is YouTube. They've been producing a number of training videos, very strategic about the title of the videos. Obviously, they've done their SEO research, and these videos are being watched, and people are going from the video to the WP Fusion website. And I think at the present moment, when it comes to actually getting traffic, what I've heard, because I have 2 businesses, I have WP-Tonic and I have MailRite, so I'm in kind of 2 worlds. But what I hear that's really working is YouTube and Instagram. That they're the things that are really driving traffic, where people are seeing real results. So what do you reckon, Sally? What do you think of this article? Am I waffling?
Oh, I don't think you're waffling. I think what drives traffic for you really depends on who your audience is.
Yeah.
And where you're busy. I absolutely agree with the value of transcripts for either video or audio, both for search engines and for humans, because, I can read a lot faster than you can talk. I really like podcasts. I've been deep into podcasts since 2005, and I mostly listen to them when my eyes have to be occupied elsewhere. And I am not the person who will, slow down and stay on the page for the video. It's like, I ain't got time for that.
I forgot, but you're not really a video person, are you?
No. I believe in the value of video done well. But yeah, I would rather read your tutorial than watch it unless there's something moving that I absolutely have to see. And I also, it's pretty darn difficult to search through a video to find out where in the video the particular, bit you want to hear is, if it's an hour-long video. And,
yeah, but let's face it. So you know, it's one of your.
Yes, it's a quirk of mine, which I am aware
quirks,
is not
I love
universally.
you for your quirks. You don't
universally applicable.
You're not a sheep person. You do your. Let's face it. You don't even have a smartphone because you can't be bothered, can you? Because you're in front of a computer most of the day, aren't you?
I am in front of a computer most of the time. My husband was laughing at me that I took my computer with me to this conference, but it's like, well, I actually took a fair number of notes, and I'd rather have the computer to type on if I'm taking notes than try to do them on a phone. Now, he was holding up his phone and making videos of the speakers sometimes, and sending them to Facebook or wherever. And I could do that if I had a phone, and it might be useful. Video can be good. You shouldn't use it for its own sake. You should use video because video is a good way to communicate what you want to communicate to the people you want to communicate it to. And so like, I'll just make a video because I hear video is cool. Well, you're going to make a crappy video and it's not going to do anything for you. If you're making a video that's on topic, relevant, and helpful to people, and we know there are a lot of people who are hanging out on YouTube and who want to watch videos, that's going to be useful to you and drive traffic. And, having the transcript is a bonus for the search engines. In terms of linking, I am usually linking to sources of some kind when I'm writing because I, was an academic, and that's what you do. And, hypertext, when somebody showed me the concept of hypertext, my first thought was footnotes. So that's useful. And I noticed if you use Yoast, which most people do, they recommend a few outgoing links. And I've known people like, I don't want to link to anything outside my website. I don't want to, it's like, oh, for God's sake, like, really? The tag thing is like this is a hack. Like, people haven't known this since the dawn of time, or at least the dawn of SEO.
Yeah. What do you reckon, John? Do you think I was right when I was talking about YouTube and Instagram being to the leading drivers at the present moment?
Yeah, I would say YouTube is having a bit of a resurgence. I mean, honestly, it's owned by Google, and it's also the second biggest search engine in the world. I think that it is very much, if you have a video, it's easy to find how to do stuff. And I think a lot of people search on YouTube, for how to, solve problems.
I'm just going to interrupt. I'm just going to interrupt a little bit. The other thing that occurs to me about YouTube strength is it's got, like, it's the conversation like younger people are leaving Facebook to Instagram.
They are.
Where YouTube, I think YouTube has a very wide spread of different ages, different backgrounds that use YouTube to some extent. What do you reckon about that, John?
Yep. I think that's true. There's something for everyone on YouTube. And I think Instagram it's really peaking right now. And, they've kind of stolen some functionality or borrowed some functionality from Snapchat. So
only a little bit.
Yeah, only a little bit. But I think that that is a good place to be. I mean, Facebook, I mean, I don't know. We'll see how that plays out. There's still a lot of people on Facebook. Make no mistake.
I'm totally in with my other business with Facebook, so I'm totally biased. I accept what it is and some of the people that run it, but I don't actually believe what's happened will affect it in any substantial. I think there were other forces that were more. That's my position on that. But I think. Yeah, shall we go on to the next story? Yeah, next story. Yeah, let's go. Keep going. Before I die. beginner's, beginner's guide to mobile website optimization. I'm going to start with you, John, again. What did you think of this one?
It's good. I mean, because let's face it, I still see sites out there where people have not made their sites mobile friendly. And, essentially, if you want to have a site that gets traffic at all, it has to be mobile friendly. Load time, that's the bottom of the Maslow's hierarchy pyramid. A lot of people are still using $5 a month hosting. Your site's never going to load fast on that. Your site needs to be, responsive.
Well, it depends. If your site is flat HTML, it might load tolerably well. But if you have a dynamic website, not going to happen.
No, not going to happen.
I constantly have these conversations on certain membership orientated Facebook groups, and you always get this question, is my shared hosting going to work for my membership site? And they always bring up SiteGround as well. And I say to them, as one of the of that type of hosting provider, SiteGround, in my opinion, is one of the best choices. I think with InMotion, I would say InMotion is my second choice, but I think the clear leader, based on my experience of that kind of cheaper end of the market, if you're going to go that route, is SiteGround.
I think they're very good, but they will ding you for resource usage. We a client who's there, and the problem with our overruns was that we were still hosting our podcast files on the web server, which is not generally a good idea, but we'd gotten away with it for a long time, and we just needed to move those over to a dedicated media server because the podcast was getting enough downloads that it was stretching our server resources. So paying for the separate media hosting was way cheaper than getting a VPS or cloud, whatever that they were otherwise going to push us into moving to. So yeah, there's gonna come a point. Well, is it good enough for your membership website? Well, how many members do you have, and how active are they?
Yeah, well, it's how my mind works. But as you were talking, that's the main thing. Also, there's a great article that Brian Jackson from Kinster, I'm not bringing it up because they're just a sponsor, he did write, because I was discussing this with Chris, and Chris brought it up that Brian wrote one of the best articles about what you should consider when you're looking at a hosting provider, when you've got a membership website. So I'll put that in the show notes. It's one of the best written articles I've read on the subject. And there are specific peculiarities probably isn't the right word, around what you require from a membership site that's got any kind of membership. Basically, my position is I don't think a shared hosting is going to really, you're going to have a joyous experience, especially around mobile. This is why I'm bringing it up. I think you've got to look at something that's got a bit more humph to it. And I don't think a virtual private server, that's that's jumping it a bit too much. I think a really quality shared managed hosting is probably the route to go. The only problem with that statement is, and I recommend it, is that I recommend that you have a subdomain for your actual membership portal from your actual main website. So you got two websites, and a lot of these, Kinster is one of those, is that with their basic plan, they will only allow you one site. But I think they will be flexible. I've had a little chat with them, and I think, especially if you say you heard this from WP-Tonic, I think they'd be a little bit flexible with you. I don't know. I can't swear to that, but I would hope for that. So that's the main. I'm going off subject here, but it was all brought up. You say that, John, about, and you, Sally, that you know a lot of this cheap hosting when it comes to mobile, it just doesn't do the job, does it, John?
Nah, it doesn't. And I want to touch on something really quick. I know we're pressed for time, but
We're not actually. We've got another 10 minutes, but we can end this.
okay. Yeah, but I mean, the user experience, this is like toward the top of the pyramid. Like, can people find what they're looking for, and how's the overall user experience? That's something that really does matter, and I think that people tend to overlook it in SEO. And the way that the analogy that I like to make about that is, think of it like a three-leg table. You have to have content, you have to have links coming into your site, and you have to have good user experience, and part of that speed and the overall look and feel of your site. But it's all there to make people be able to find what they came there for. And if you have a janky looking site that loads slow, you can have all the other parts, but over time you're not going to rank really well.
Well, and if you have a site that's like super fast and does all the other things that they recommend, and people can't find what they're looking for, it's not going to do you any good.
Mm-hmm.
Without that last part, none of your other efforts matter.
I think the other thing, I like to get your views about this. It's just really occurred to me, when you're building a site, you really got to understand your audience to some extent, to the best you can, and you always, and looking back about all the conversations I've had with owners of businesses over the past 11 years that I've been actively involved in website development and with WordPress, is that so many clients, they say, well, we want to make money from the website. We want the website to build our business. And they're all, they're obvious statements, aren't they? And understandable. I've never heard a client say, what value are we going to offer the people that come to this website? I've never had a real conversation. And I think if you don't come with that mindset, is what are we going to really offer to the audience for them to really want to come to this website and read what we got to offer and come back a second time or come back a third time? What are we really offering? I think if you don't really get in that mindset, you got problems. What do you reckon, John?
Yeah, I mean, and that's the big thing. Everybody, they don't invest in a website or SEO or any type of marketing unless they're trying to build their business. But I think that's where we have to intercede on their behalf and help them kind of connect the dots between, here's what you have and you want this to support your business. We have to be kind of that investigator, like trying to figure out how to, bring them to that point. Because a lot of people understand their own business like in and out. They totally have all this knowledge in their head, but they don't know how to translate that into a website or digital marketing or content marketing in a way that's going to draw, customers in. That's where we have to help them.
And I was good, before I throw it to Sally, you see, Sally, you kind of use terms like lead magnets or evergreen content. Every industry's got its terminology, hasn't it? But fundamentally what it's really saying is that you've got to provide some value to your target audience that really gives them some value, isn't it, Sally?
Well, yeah. And, if you don't know what value you provide to your clients, maybe you need to interview your clients and find out, because that's the, if they're still paying you, then they must be getting some value. But sometimes it's not that obvious to the business owner what the business is about or what the business is best at or why people come back. And then, that's the thing you have to go find out if you want to build a website that will help convey and continue that. And so, yeah, you need all the mobile friendliness and the speed in loading and all of these things, because, yeah, if people can't get to your message, it's going to be tough for them to read it, and people will leave if it takes too long for something to load, or if it's hard for them to use the website, or if they can't, find what they're looking for easily, or if they can't figure out what you're doing. So all of these things are important, but at the thing that the client needs to know about their customers and what matters to their customers, and we had a presentation at this conference yesterday by one of the guys from Ideo, and he was talking about people want to jump into the ideation phase of building too quickly, and you need to spend more time like developing empathy with the person that you're ultimately creating this for, with people who are going to be using it, and talk to them and find out what matters, and look out for be on the lookout for things that are broken. So yeah, if you build something based on what you think people want, and what they actually want is completely different, you'll be sitting there thinking, I spent all this money on this website and nothing is happening.
Yeah, it's funny because this is all linked in a way. I interviewed last week Andrew Michael from Hotjar, and you find the episode, it's 301 folks, and you find the episode on the WP-Tonic website. And Hotjar is a leading product. They offer a suite of tools, a heat map and other tools that shows you how people that come into your website are interacting with your website. And the reason why I bring it up in the conversation, he was saying to Hotjar, is that they were in the midst of doing a massive external review. They were doing a load of surveys and a lot of outreach to their existing client base. This is a company that's growing quite rapidly. They're based in Malta, but it's a distributed company. They have people over the world. Because they came to the conclusion with their content that they were producing, and he was in the midst of producing a newly launched educational section of the Hotjar website, where it was going to be like a university about usability testing, and they'd spent a lot of money, and he'd been in the midst of it. But get back to subject. Come on, Jonathan, get back to subject. What he was saying was that they realised they didn't really understand the users, who their clients. Well, they had a good sense because obviously the company was growing, but they weren't satisfied that they really understood the needs, the wants of their user base that would enable them to keep growing the company. And I thought it was a quite honest statement from them, and they were spending a lot of money and resources trying to rectify that. What do you reckon about that, Sally?
Yeah, I think that's that's important. So yeah, you need to find out what your users need, and then you need to aim everything else you're doing at the result of providing what they need in your website in order for them to get what they need from your services or your product or your nonprofit or whatever it is that you are.
And it can sound a bit comic because obviously that's a 70-person business. But just to wrap up, before we wrap up the show, John, it doesn't have to be that complicated, does it? But you do. This should be on the top of your mind, really, though, doesn't it? With any kind of website owner that wants to get a result from their website, should it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Content is a big part of it, and it's often the most neglected part of drawing people into your website and building your brand. But all brands are built through content.
Totally. Right, we're going to wrap up the show. I think we've had an interesting discussion. Well, I thought it was interesting. I didn't contribute that much to it, unfortunately, but there we go. Sally, how can people find out more about you and what you're up to?
You can find me at WPFangirl.com. You can find the meetup at eastbaywp.com. We just had an entertaining discussion about inheriting other people's code. And you can find me on Twitter as @SallyGetch, and I am, if you can spell my name, you'll find me. I'm unique in Google.
That's great. And John, how can people find out more about you and what you're up to?
Sure thing. You can find me at my website, which is lockdownseo.com. You can also find me on YouTube. Just Google Lockdown SEO or Lockdown Design, and you will find me.
That's great. And if you want to find out more about WP-Tonic, folks, go to the WP-Tonic website. We've got some great articles that are going to be coming up this month around membership and learning management systems. And if you really want to support the show, give us a review on iTunes. It really does help us, the show in general, and it helps me get the kind of interviews that I normally have on a Wednesday with various interesting people that want to come on the show and have a chat with me. We'll see you next week, folks. Bye. See you later.
Bye.